Rudy Gobert is probably the most disrespected NBA player I've ever seen. After doing everything the haters said he couldn't against the Suns, then winning his 4th Defensive Player of the Year, all it took was one big game from Jokic for the consensus to write him off. He followed that up with huge defensive performances in games 6 and 7, crickets. Then after another great defensive game where both of Minnesota's stars struggled offensively, all it took was one play against the best isolationist in basketball, and he's a fraud who should have been benched. In this most recent Game 4 though, there's nothing they can point to, and that's because it was a complete masterclass, one of the best defensive games he's ever played, and they absolutely refuse to talk about it, so I will. Of course, Gobert's known for his ability to protect the rim. Here, it's his sheer presence and positioning doing all of the work, playing in between Kyrie and Gafford to take away both a drive and lob, which makes Kyrie overthink and dribble into a tougher situation. As long as he's at the rim, advantages that the offense would typically attack are often nullified. Kyrie has Cat on an island, an easy blow-by, but he's running right into Gobert, with Conley also there to force a turnover. A few possessions, the Wolves threw out a zone, and in these spots, Rudy's impact is so obvious. The Mavs go to PJ Washington in the middle, he looks to get to his floater, but it barely even leaves his hands. Even when Dallas threw a 5-out lineup on the court with Kleba playing the 5, Rudy's roaming the floor as a sort of free safety, and a big point of emphasis for them in this one was giving up threes to role players to protect the paint. In games 1 through 3 of this series, the Mavs never attempted more than 31 three-pointers. In Game 4, they attempted 40, their most of the entire postseason. Some of that had to do with Gobert's presence. It also had to do with the team's rotations. After sending 2 at Kyrie, they're forced into a scramble, and everyone executes their job to perfection, once again shutting off the paint, and the result is a corner 3 that they'll live with. Whenever Dallas got one of their advantageous isolation situations, whoever was one pass away would come with a late double. Like I said, conceding those spot-up threes. I want to be clear though, while Rudy's job is primarily to operate near the rim, he had some awesome possessions out in space. With Powell replacing Lively, that's of course a big difference, and Rudy did a really good job of pressuring the ball. He also found himself switched on to Kyrie about 5 minutes into the first, and he did everything right, showing his length, leaving a cushion of space to protect himself from a drive, and getting a hand up on the pull-up 3. This is really important because the pick and roll covers they went to against Kyrie in this one was a high drop. He picks up the ball above the 3-point line, moves his feet to stay in front of a drive, and contests a mid-range jumper. The reason they're bringing these coverages so high is to prevent the pull-up 3. Kyrie still has some room to get into the shot, but with Gobert's length right in front of him, that's not an easy make. Luka, on the other hand, doesn't have that same quick transfer of energy with his pull-up jumper, so against him, Gobert was primarily sitting back in a deep drop, focused on taking away the paint like I keep saying. And the Mavs came prepared to counter, going to a Spain pick and roll to get Gobert back screened, that way it's more difficult to keep the ball in front. So in these spots, the big man not only has to worry about Luka, he also has to worry about navigating a screen himself, and he did about as well as you could expect. By my count, he got caught twice, but outside of that, he always found himself in the right spot at the right time. This possession devolved into a Luka isolation, where Minnesota went with Edwards instead of McDaniels. With perfect drop execution, that not only shuts off the paint, it forces those role players to make decisions on the fly. This time Jones is able to beat a closeout, but he too is running right into Gobert, and with no outlet, it's a turnover. That's not to say he was perfect though. On this one, it's Luka who beats a closeout, and he uses an up fake to get Gobert in the air before drawing a foul, and that's actually his 5th with over 8 minutes to go. And not only did he remain in the game, he played some of the best defense we've seen all season. It started with Kyrie attacking him in that high drop coverage. He swings his hips and moves his feet to stick with a drive all the way to the rim without fouling. I said earlier how his presence at the rim made Kyrie overthink. Well, it can also speed him up. As soon as he starts coming over, the ball goes up, and it's way too strong off the glass. So next time down they go to Luka. He sets up the high pick and roll, Gobert's back and drop, while Edwards goes under the screen, which gives up the 3, but this one doesn't fall. A play later, it's the high pick and roll against Drop once again. Rudy stays in front of the ball and shows his length while Anderson is glued to Luka's hip, and it creates another one of those corner closeout situations. PJ attacks baseline, tries to force Gobert into a foul, but to no avail. With just over a minute to go, that's when the coverage became more aggressive. He switches onto Luka, and as I said earlier, Conley's gonna come with a late double, conceding that pass to the wing, and they once again scramble to perfection, not letting the ball touch the paint before giving up a 3 on the wing that's way off. Next time it's Kyrie who runs the pick and roll, and Gobert's gonna jump out in a hedge, showing his length, moving his feet to not give up a drive, which results in a turnover that effectively ended the game. Well, Luka did his best to keep it alive with this ridiculous 4-point play, but that ultimately wasn't enough. The Wolves lived to fight another day after by far their best defensive performance of the series. Here's a look at their defensive rating over these 4 games. I'd like to mention that in games 1 and 4, they primarily ran drop coverage, while in 2 and 3, they sent more blitzes and hedges. The craziest stat of the night though, in my opinion, is that they only scored 36 points in the paint. That's the Gobert effect, and quite frankly, this entire playoff run has been. What you're looking at right here is Minnesota's game-by-game plus-minus with Gobert on the floor versus off in the playoffs. They've been better with him off the floor in just 1 of the 14 games he's played, that recent Game 3 against the Mavs. They've won his minutes in 3 of their 6 losses, and they've been a minus with him on the bench in 4 of their 7 wins. In total, they've outscored their opponents by 118 points with him on the court, and been outscored by 56 points with him on the bench. And all that's to say, next time you hear about how he's been a liability in the playoffs, how someone's rescinding their vote for Defensive Player of the Year and claiming he ruined the award, how the Wolves actually went on all of their big runs when he's on the bench, just know that in reality, that's not at all what's happening on the court, and that Game 4 masterclass was only the tip of the iceberg. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out my website and social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you thought of this game. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.